Sometimes the wrong choices lead us to the right path. Sometimes spiritual realizations happen from the ruin. Sometimes peace is born in a mess. Trust the uncertainty of life. Trust the unknown in life. They don't follow any norms. And if you continue to trust the uncertainty and the unknown, they may help you to find your voice. I am Chandresh Bhardwaj, and this is Break the Norms. Namaste everyone. Quick announcement before I get into the episode. Den Meditation is doing a 21-day meditation challenge starting from March 1st, and I'm leading those 21 meditations. I have recorded these meditations with intention of love, healing, compassion, evolving the awareness, and so much more. The link is on the show notes. Read the description, watch the video. I truly believe all of you will benefit hugely from this meditation. Now, starting this topic for finding your voice. I think it's something we all have struggled with at some point, and sometimes the struggle shows up, and that's fine, right? Because there is so much noise, so much pressure, expectation, so many things are happening around us, and the mind gets into that noise and that pressure, and we start to feel that maybe we have lost that voice, maybe the voice does not exist, or maybe it will not show up when I want it. It's all the fear of mind, because mind always compare, okay? Awareness never compares, because awareness really knows who you are. Awareness also knows what's your destiny and how you will evolve through it. But the mind lives in the past, or it continues to project the future. So it will always limit and block your true vision. It will always limit and block your dreams, your hopes, because mind is constantly comparing your journey with someone. And the truth is, you are neither superior nor inferior. You are simply unique. You are you, and that's your superpower. I'll share a quick experience, a brief glimpse from my own journey. When I left Wall Street, I had no clue what my voice is, what I want to do. I had a rough idea that I want to be in spirituality, but it's like saying I want to be a drop in the ocean. What would that drop do, right? I had no specific idea. And there was obviously pressure from everyone around me. And they all thought I have a plan, because that's just the aura or the vibration I was giving them. I had to show a certain confidence because I was leaving my job when it was going to get bigger, better, and serious. And that's when I left it. And they all thought he must be knowing what he's doing because he's leaving, with so much confidence. But I had no clue at all. I remember only because there was so much pressure, I thought I'll create a website for Break the Norms. And Break the Norms name, by the way, was always there. I was writing notes about it since 8th grade. But when you write in high school, it's for fun. It's curiosity expressing itself. But when you have to make a living out of it, you don't know what the heck you will do. So I hired these super cheap interns from New Delhi. And they said, well, make your website, but do it for $350 or something. And I said, how about $125? They said, no, let's do it for $325. Then I said, how about $225? And they said, no, let's do it for $300. And eventually we agreed on some random odd amount in the middle. And the website was terribly looking. It was almost like a spammy website. It looked like a spam website. I had the worst colors in it, and it was not at all their fault. It was my insecurity. My confusion was glowing on that website that I have no clue what I'm doing with it. So I told them, let's not even release it. So they never released it, and I worked on another website with the same team, and they did good job for the second website, and I had all the programs on it and everything, but I had no clue what I would do with those programs. So that's how it started for me. Website was sort of a signature resume, on the internet, that's all. But I started doing the talks, and no one would show up for the talks, by the way. And I have no idea if I ever shared this before on the podcast. So I would schedule the talks and no one showed up. For the first talk, the second, the third, the fourth, no one showed up. And one day I was just sitting and doing nothing because there was nothing to do. My father, he saw me and he said, I know you're upset because no one is showing up. But my ego and that masculine mask, which didn't want to show its pain, it said, no, I'm fine. I know they'll show up. I have a plan. And he said, okay, when you are open enough to listen to this and pay attention to it, just know that they're not showing up because you don't want them to show up. When you are willing for them to show up, then they will show up. And in my head, I was like, of course I want them to show up. I'm putting this stuff on Facebook. I'm announcing it, wherever I can. I want them to show up. And he said, deep down, you don't want them to show up. And that's where the problem is. And he was absolutely right. When I was meditating the same night and the ego was fading away and acceptance was coming in, and I was 21 or maybe even 20. And I realized, yes, the truth is I don't want anyone to show up because I don't know my voice. I don't know what I'll be talking, or I know what I can talk in the first workshop, but do I know enough to talk? Am I qualified enough to talk? Because the South Asian community, they love my father. They see him on TV shows, on big media appearances. So they obviously want to see me doing what he does. And in the non-South Asian community, no one knew me. So it was very interesting because whenever I have spoken in the public back in the day when I was 20 or 21, and if it was in the South Asian community, they would always see the reflection of their guru in me. And my father is very actively working, and he has always been very actively working. And when your guru is actively working, his followers expect even a lot more from me, right? That was one confusion. Number two, the people who did not know my father and they knew the other Indian teacher who was very popular, who's Deepak Chopra, they would also compare my work, which did not exist at all, but only the fact that Deepak ji is Indian and I'm Indian, that was enough for them to compare. And that's just silly, right? That I have not done any work. I was just starting out. So my comparisons were already happening with these two amazing, powerful people. And I was very flattered at the time, but deep down, that was also a major source of my nervousness. So first thing that I had to accept was I don't want anyone to be in the room, in the gathering, and that's why they were not coming. So I had to take a pause, take a break, and really dive deeper into just asking myself, what is my voice? How can I serve them? What is it that I want to share passionately? And what am I holding back? Who am I? So many questions, but I knew I had to take a break and just go deeper into these questions. So I started asking these questions, and then I started doing the talk with a gap of a month or two, I think. And suddenly 15 or 20 people showed up, it felt like an auditorium full of 300 people because I basically was struggling for even one person to show up. And sometimes you need to go through that no one showing up because that becomes a powerful way for you to realize what your voice is. Another interesting thing that started to happen, I would be going to speak in certain venues. It was still before the time I really started doing the tantra work. This was the first 2 years or so. I was still not 23. I would go to these places and they would share, we wanted Deepak Chopra to be here and speak, but he's obviously out of our budget, out of our reach. We don't know how to access him, but we got to know about you and we are so happy you are here because you can, talk about the same stuff or similar stuff. And I would say, yeah, I'm flattered. Your second choice was me after Deepak. Or even if I was the last choice, there were big names in the whole list. And it started to happen pretty consistently, or at least, once in a month. So I started to think maybe I'll become poor man's Deepak Chopra. That's what's going to happen. So there's going to be a part of crowd, the South Asian crowd, who would want me to be simply replica of my father and my grandfather and my lineage. And there's going to be other crowd who would want me to be replica of Deepak Chopra or Osho or J. Krishnamurti, because these were the names people would always compare me with. And flattering part was they were all big names, and the non-flattering part was they all are so great because they are so unique in their expression. At least my father and Deepak ji, they both are working actively, and you can clearly see these people are just so unique in how they talk and how they express their truth. They are fearless. They have their own personality, and as a 22-year-old kid, that's enough to make you insecure and confused. So I had to constantly reinvent, reflect, and ask myself how I can simply share my truth without comparing, without letting the noise corrupt me, without letting the trending corrupt me. And I'm so happy that all of this started happening in the very, first few months and first 2 years of my journey, because it gave me a lot to reflect on. It gave me a lot of fear, which was very important to just understand where the heck I'm going. And I realized one thing, that the trending spirituality is not my kind of spirituality, because all the famous, Facebook was pretty big at that time. Instagram was not. Facebook was pretty big, and all the famous teachers, or the young teachers, the younger ones, in the early 20s or mid 20s or late 20s, they were all talking or spreading a certain kind of spirituality which never appealed to me. So there was one option of picking a certain style from them and build it up as I wanted, or there was other option to just do what I want to do and go with no trends and go with only one passion, one curiosity within. That's all. And that's what felt right. That's what felt good. Because see, here's the thing. If you want to cultivate your voice and know your voice, you got to know one thing. You cannot at all copy anyone, because you need a certain hunger, a certain fuel to keep your passion alive. And if you're copying anyone, if you're simply following the trends, that hunger, that passion and fire will eventually die down, because there will be many days, many nights when you'll feel nothing is working and it will never ever work. But if you have that original, voice within, if there's passion and fire, that hunger, that madness, your fears will not dominate you. Your anxiety will be very little compared to the passion you have for your dreams. And that's what I started to really understand, that you got to have a purpose that's much bigger than your ego. A purpose, a mission that's much more powerful than your fears, your anxiety, and your silly ideas of success. Because the only thing we know is that we don't know anything. So my definition of success and failure changed a lot in the first 5 years, because what I used to think about success was not at all success. It was just a silly wishful thinking of a 21-year-old. But as I got to experience life on a deeper level, I realized everything I knew about life, about success, about failure, it was all just coming from outside. It was a borrowed knowledge. None of them was my experience, and I had to really go through certain important lessons to understand what exactly is my definition of success and failure. And that's what you will also go through, and that's the best thing that can happen to your dreams. So first thing is, cultivate a mission, an intention, a dream that's much, much bigger than your existence, much, much more powerful than your fears, because that's something which will continue to give you fuel, which will continue to give you fire. You need that. All right. And secondly, you got to be very honest with what you know and what you don't know. So don't talk about what you don't know. Don't talk about what you have not experienced, but simply get deeper into what is your experience. And that's what, it's a great place to start with. We are in a time when information is available on podcast, books, internet, everywhere. And if you start to take on that information and sign your name under it, it's going to bounce back. But if you have your own experience with that information, that's a different ball game. So when you come across any information, consume it, live it, test it out. How does it work out for you? And what's your interpretation of that information? And then start to express it out, because that's something which can give you your own unique signature voice. And is there an emotional fire connected with it? Because if you're not emotionally connected to the whole thing, then again, it may die down pretty soon. And one of the meditations that I suggest to everyone for this process is asking yourself, who am I? Because you got to understand your labels, the roles, all the stories of the mind that play their narrative in this process. So asking yourself, who am I, is going to be important. Number 2, how do I serve? All right. Number 3, what am I holding back? Okay. Just these 3 questions can do a lot of magic. These 3 questions can bring you a lot of more, hope, creative strength, and so much that you really need to, build the voice. And finally, you got to be relaxed, because no one out there really knows what they're doing. Everyone is simply experimenting. You can watch the interview of the best actors out there, best storytellers, best business people, and when they're asked the secret of their success, the secret of their craft, none of them really have a very specific formula or template. They're simply showing up for their day-to-day job. They are showing up for their passion. They're experimenting. They fail 7 times out of 10, but 3 times they succeed. And those 3, small wins become big enough for them to fuel for the next chapter. And that's really how life goes on. So don't take the pressure of constantly winning this game, because if you're joyful, if you have the courage and strength and hope within, you're already winning the game. And there will be certain times when there's going to be anxiety, stress, and pain. And just honor that. Don't hate it. Don't fight with it. But just honor it, that I'm glad you're showing up. You're telling me something deep that's happening within me. So I'll take rest. I'll step back. I'll get into self-care. So go out for a walk, meditate, watch a good movie, hang out with friends, family, people who support you and empower you. Finding the voice is an organic meditative process. The more you show up for your life, the more your voice will also show up. It's really that simple. And I'm genuinely curious to know how this process has been building up for you. And even after this episode, if you're going to add on new things. So please let me know for this particular episode how it has helped you, or I hope it has motivated you. Tag me in your Insta story and share your story with me. I'm really curious to listen to you. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I'll speak to you next week. I hope this podcast may travel through the untapped universe of your darkness, light, courage, passion, and so much more. Please do subscribe and be ready to break your norms. I am so excited and very honored to be part of your sacred journey through this podcast.